The International Financial Corporation has today committed itself to investing $5.3 billion in development in Africa. The projects targeted will include infrastructure and the health sector. So let's delve into these investments, and also that, of course, is direct investments from the IFC. Salim Karimji, Senior Manager for Southern Africa from the IFC, joining me at the desk. Thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.
So it's interesting if you look at that, of course, direct exposure, direct investments, as opposed to the advisory role that you play in many transactions, and that you said is $165 million worth. But when it comes to where you're actually putting IFC money or putting investments from the IFC, tell us about the sectors specifically across Southern Africa, across Sub-Saharan Africa that you're focusing on.
Two big sectors of focus right now. Infrastructure is one, hard infrastructure, and agribusiness or food security. Mm-hmm. That's where we're focused. We continue to do a tremendous amount of business in the financial markets as well with banks. Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to agribusiness, I mean, I saw an avocado plant grower cropped into one of the investments you're making. Yeah. But are they small-scale agribusinesses? Are you looking for quite large-scale agricultural businesses? And the question I ask is because we've got small-scale farmers across South Africa, across Africa right now. So we need to help them scale up.
Sure.
So what is your approach to that issue?
So we have a bifurcated approach. I mentioned that agribusiness is a priority, and for our direct business, it's usually larger scale corporates. But we continue to do almost half of our business with financial institutions, and that is how we try to support smaller businesses, including small agribusinesses. Mm-hmm. We finance local banks and encourage them, provide them with skills sometimes as well, so that they can directly finance those small farmers, those small agribusiness companies.
We talk about Africa being the next frontier market for the agricultural sector when it comes to the development of that and the type of returns you could see in the future. Are you seeing good, solid returns for investing right now in the agricultural business? I mean, what's your outlook for returns from investing in that?
So it's in a way too early to tell in terms of Africa's agricultural revolution, let me call it that. We've been at it now for 2 years and we're starting to see good performance, but too early to say that we're seeing unusually high returns. But if the rest of our experience in Africa is anything to go by, in non-agricultural activities, we're going to have a great ride in agribusiness as well in Africa.
So it makes sense, good business sense right now. But what would you see as potential risks? I mean, apart from the weather factor and climate change issues, which is still being debated, what would you see as the risks around the investments that you're making in the space?
Really, the biggest risk we see is policy risk, where governments might change policies that affect the viability of the businesses that we finance. There are, of course, all of the risks associated with the existing global slowdown and the reduced offtake of agricultural commodities from Africa. But I'm less concerned about that now because the domestic demand for food and value-added food is continuing to grow really rapidly. Mm-hmm. So one could almost say international markets are receding in importance, and it's much more about, can we maintain a policy posture in Africa that continues to encourage private agriculture?
Let's talk about your investments in South Africa, because that amounted to around $401 million in support of certain projects across the board. So one of the projects, interestingly enough, is Country Bird, where you've given them a loan of $25 million. But tell us about the core projects that you've supported during the period.
So really two big areas that we've been active in the last fiscal year: renewable energy under the government's RE-IPP program. We've done, it was a record year for us in South Africa, and a good 2/3 of the 400 million that we did was for concentrated solar power projects and wind power projects in South Africa. Mm-hmm. The other third, a little bit in the financial market space, and a fair bit, you mentioned the avocado grower, and Country Bird is another one, so in the farming area, in the agricultural space.
So keeping to the key themes.
Yeah.
It is interesting that you say a record year of investing, but I suppose one might read that headline there and ask potentially questions in light of the economic environment right now, but I suppose it's very targeted at a growth sector right now. Yes. So when you're talking about energy investing in South Africa, what type of sense does that make from a kind of economical perspective right now when it comes to returns, and are you still going to be committed to, say, the renewable energy program or outside of renewable energy in South Africa?
I think renewable energy is the growth area in South Africa in terms of the energy mix. We're supporting it partly because it is so high-tech that a lot of commercial financial institutions are a little bit uncomfortable. So part of the role IFC plays is say, well, we've seen this elsewhere in the world, we've done it elsewhere in the world, we'd like to do it here and come with us. And part of our role as a financial institution is to encourage others to come to the party. I don't think that we will find ourselves in need for, if you want, the backbone power infrastructure in South Africa, which is the coal-based power. But they don't need IFC. But on this cutting-edge stuff they do, and it fits very nicely into another strategic area for us, which is climate change, and that's a global strategy, not just an African or a South African strategy. So we're, in terms of meeting our strategic targets, we're able to do both at the same time. And we hope to continue to support the REIPP program in South Africa, but it's not our job to do what commercial finance will do itself. It's our job to do what they're not comfortable doing and
reduce the risk.
Yeah, reduce the risk, encourage them to do it by themselves next time. So maybe 3 years from now, we'll be doing something else that's too difficult.
What's that going to be? Can you see anything on the horizon that you're not doing right now?
Very, very hard to say in South Africa. I mean, we've been pressing very hard on housing, on low-income housing and affordable housing, and maybe that's a space we'll be able to find a role to play. It's so far been financing itself very, very nicely, but I know that the need is not receding, it's growing, if anything, and there might be an interesting role we can play, some innovation that we can make that we will then do, and eventually, it's in a way our role is to work ourselves out of a market by making it easy for other people to do it.
Thanks for joining us.